Okay, so I am back with my book talk for Chain of Gold, and I wore this because there's so much LGBTQ plus characters in this book. It is fabulous, and I'm so pleased. But yes, so read this book, read it, love it, breathe it. It's wonderful. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. So good. I want the next one, and I want it now. Sadly, I can't have to wait till next year, but I want it now. This book follows the descendants of the characters in the Infernal Devices, and there's stuff happening. It's set in London in 1903, and the main character, so this lovely lady here, is Cordelia Carstairs, and she is fabulous. You will love her, and if you don't love her, what is wrong with you? But, yeah, so this is our main crew, right here. And yeah, it's so good. Read it, love it, and come back to me once you've read it. Alright, so I'm gonna jump into my spoiler section now. So, something that's a recurring theme throughout this book is little flashbacks to the kids growing up. So we start off with one of those, is Lucy, who is Lucy Herondale, and daughter of Tessa and Will, and she plays in the Brussels Forest, and she gets lost, and a teenage boy rescues her, and she thinks he's a changeling. Then it starts off, the Merry Thieves, who is Will Herondale, Matthew Fairchild, who's the son of Henry and Charlotte, Thomas Lightwood, who's the son of Gideon and Sophie, and Christopher Lightwood, who's the son of Gabriel and Cicely. Yeah, they fight a demon, and it's the first one in like a year, which I find really strange. And James accidentally shadow travels, because if you've read Tales from the Shadowhunters Academy, you know that he has this ability, because he's got demon blood in him from Tessa, to travel through the shadows and turn into a shadow himself. And so after that, they go to this place because they have their own room at the Devil Tavern, so they can have their space from the adults. And apparently Thomas is really tall now. In all the other stories that I've read about Thomas, he's been the shortest of the bunch, despite being the oldest. And now he's like a giant. And yay, Grace Blackthorne is moving to London. So, unlike, I think, a lot of people, actually no, not like a lot of people, but if there's one story you should read before reading Chain of Gold, it's The Midnight Air from the Bane Chronicles, okay? It gives you backstory into James and Grace and why we hate Grace and Tatiana Blackthorne. And yeah, she's moving to London apparently, and I'm so thrilled, clearly. And the Carstairs are also moving to London, and I'm like, yay, Cordelia! But Alistair is still uphill. And Elias, their father, is on trial for something he didn't do, at least according to Cordelia. And Cordelia is absolutely wonderful and has a huge crush on James. You better choose her. And I know he does with his family tree. Okay, I gotta get something off my chest. I don't have the picture to show you because I don't have the cover for that, sadly. Wait, I did print it off in this. This is my Shadowhunter book. This family tree here that we got on the inside of Clockwork Princess. Okay, according to this family tree, and I'm sticking to this like a Bible. According to this, Will marry Cordelia. Okay? And they will have and they will lead to Jace. So eventually. So Will marry Cordelia, which makes me really excited. But there is a marriage here that makes me furious. And another one that makes me really, really confused. Lucy marries Jesse Blackthorne. And that's how we get all the million Blackthorns we get in the Dark Artificers. But I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Because according to the main chronicles, he's dead. Very dead. So how could she marry a ghost? And then apparently my baby, my innocent, sweet little baby boy, marries Christopher marries Grace Blackthorne, the witch, the enchantress. How does she marry? No, you hurt my boy Christopher, I'm gonna kill you. I will kill you. I don't care if you're a fictional character, we'll find a way. Yeah, so I'm sticking to that family tree, and I'll probably get back to that later in this rant. Cordelia and Lucy's friendship is so sweet. They've been friends since they were a kid, and Lucy's been writing a story for her for the last 5 years. Like, every week, she would send a new chapter in this story about the wonderful Cordelia, and I'm just like, oh, this friendship is so precious, and they're going to be parabatai, and we're going to see a parabatai relationship for once where they're both women, and I'm very excited to read it. And so then we have a flashback where we see how James first met Grace, and Tatiana being a manipulative, cunning pile of trash. And basically she went and got him to cut her thorns or something on her gate. And yeah, that's how they met, and it was very, very manipulative. And then there's a ball, and the general girls are irritating, and they make fun of Cordelia, and I'm like... Sonia is a very exacting mother for Cordelia. And then James dances with Cordelia, and he calls her Daisy, because that is the nickname he came up with her when they were younger. But then he abandons her for Grace. As soon as Grace walks in, he abandons her to go and dance with her. And I'm like, you son of a... But then Matthew swooped in and saved her from, her reputation being in tatters. And I was just like, my hero. And then we see Jesse Blackthorne. And we realize the boy that helped Lucy in the forest was Jesse Blackthorne. And it turns out he's an unusual ghost, because Lucy can see him, but neither Will nor James can, and they can always see ghosts. It's a thing with Herondales. So, and he finds it strange that Lucy can see him. And then Grace might be sinking her hooks into Charles Fairchild, that's Matthew's older brother. And I don't trust this situation. And Cordelia is wonderful. You're going to hear that a lot from me. And then Barbara got hurt at the dance. This was, Barbara is Thomas's older sister. He has 2 of them. That's one of them. And Will worries the children aren't trained enough to fight demons, because they haven't had to deal with demons for a really long time. So he worries the children have gone soft. And it turns out James shadow traveled and saw demonic things at the ball, and one of them had grabbed Barbara and pulled her down. That's why she collapsed. And it got hurt, and it's just... And so he wants to talk to Jem, his uncle Jem, because apparently Jem has been helping him train his shadow powers, but he's glad Cordelia is back. And then it turns out Cordelia helped James through an illness when they were younger, and it was really sweet. And she read to him, and then at one point when he was really sick, because it was this illness only shadow hunters can get. It's a bit like chickenpox in a way, I think, except they call it the shivering fever or something. At one point, he was so cold and he was turning into shadows and he couldn't control it because he was sick. So she lay next to him and kept him warm. And James has thought of that day often. Then Cordelia told James off, and so they have a picnic in this park, and Cordelia told James off for abandoning at the dance, and I'm like, we're Stan a queen? And Anna is there and still fabulous. And then James kissed Grace, but then felt sick afterwards, and Grace looked panicked. And then demons attacked, and Cordelia was brilliant with Cortana, because yes, she wills Cortana. And Barbara was attacked again, and Adrian was attacked too. So you remember Adrian from Ghost of the Shadow Market, Adrian Briggs, adopted daughter of the Inquisitor. And what was really strange is it was demons during the day. Demons don't come out during the day, they only come out at night. And then the Silent Brothers are here, and Cordelia to treat the injured. And Cordelia speaks to Jem about her father. And then Cordelia and Lucy decide to head to Chiswick Manor to see if they can, because Lucy wants to see Jessie, but she won't say that, so yeah. And then James decides he must visit the Shadow World, because at the picnic he saw the Shadow World again when they got attacked, and so he's like, maybe I can find something out if I visit. And Grace and James get to... And then we have a flashback where Grace and James got to know each other. And Lucy read him a story called where he was the cruel James. And yeah, Tatiana's behind everything. Shocked I am, I tell you. I'm completely shocked. Read the Midnight Air. Then Lucy spoke to Jesse. His body is preserved somewhere. This sounds creepy. And then James shadow travels, and he follows the light and saves Cordelia from a demon in this place on the property of Chiswick Manor, because he saw Cortana. It's very odd. And it turns out Grace... Then we have another flashback where Grace gave James a bracelet, and it's like, loyalty binds you to me, or something. Loyalty binds, or something like that. I'm like, well, that's not worrying. And the Enclave is still useless and believe Tatiana's lies. And then the Merry Thieves discuss what happened to James, and they make plans to help Barbara, and James will meet Grace. Because Grace asked to see him. And Christopher is a genius. He's worked out that they need an antidote. Also, he'd made these special knives that James keeps using that seem to be very effective on demons. And Matthew seems almost perpetually drunk in this story. Whenever we see him, he's drunk. And I'm like, I don't like this trend. And Cordelia meets with Anna. And Anna seems to be breaking all the girls' hearts, because there's a girl on like the front steps and she's weeping, and it's just, it's quite funny. And Cordelia goes with Anna and Matthew to find information at this Downworlder Club place thing. And then Jesse visits Lucy to warn her that her brother's in danger, because he's like, demons are going after Grace, sent by my mother. It's a whole thing. And Cordelia meets Malcolm Fade and Hypatia Vex and saves them from being poisoned. So they promise to get in touch with Ragnar Fell, who might be able to help them with what's been going on with the demons. And then we have another flashback, and it turns out Alistair spent some time with Thomas in Paris. And then there's a battle with the Cerberus demons, and James banishes them because of his blood. And they all agree to keep it a secret to protect Grace, because Tatiana says if they say anything, she's going to pin it all on Grace. And before this, Grace wanted James to marry her, but James said no, and she got very freaked out about it and said it was because you didn't visit me this summer, because you didn't see me, so now you don't love me enough. And he's like, you want me to abandon my entire family? It's like, and she's like, you would lose nothing, I would lose everything. And then the kids speak to Ragnarfell, and they learn about this guy, Emmanuel Gast, who's a warlock who may have helped with summoning the demons that are currently terrorizing London. And then we find out Barbara died, and like I'm sad because I'm sure she was a lovely person. She was a Lightwood, and she was raised by Gideon and Sophie, so she's got to be wonderful. But sweetheart, I don't know you, so I can't cry. But I am sad that you're gone. And then Alistair and Charles are a thing? They kissed? I was just like, what the heck? You're gay, and you're gay, but you're engaged to Adriana. Like, she's gay too. This is a whole mess. And then there was another attack. And then, like, they go to try and find Emmanuel, and it turns out he's dead. But he did do the deed and summon the demon. But Lucy was able to summon his ghost and force him to talk to them, and then able to banish him. And I was just like, because everyone thinks that James is the only one that got demonic powers. And I'm like, maybe not. And then Tatiana is hurt, and I'm like, well, gee, I'm just crying buckets for her. And then Charles is engaged to Grace. I'm just like, what the heck? Last time I checked, you were engaged to Adrian, and now you're engaged to Grace. Grace, what did you do? And James is heartbroken, and Grace takes her bracelet back. And Lucy told Matthew to stop drinking, and then Matthew confronted Grace about hurting, his parabatai. And Grace touches him, and then it's like, kiss me. So he kisses her, and then breaks away, and he feels completely sick, and he's so confused as to why he actually did that. And I'm like, it's because she's a freaking siren. Anna worries for Adrian. They work out that it's a manticore demon, and they need a pixies to seal it away, because manticore demons basically can make lots of little demons unless you seal it, and then they can't make them. So Anna will have to seduce Hephaestus, and the others will grab it, and Kit and Thomas and Lucy are going to spy on a clave meeting, because it's happening in the Institute. And so James is actually doing better since Grace stumped him. Like, free of her spell and thinking of Cordelia, and everyone's very confused because they think he should be devastated right now. But because the spell is broken, his fake love isn't there. So he's actually feeling better. Like, he's confused as to why he isn't more devastated. And I'm like, it's because the love you felt for her wasn't real, and now that you're free from it, you can be yourself and realize you've actually been in love with Cordelia this whole time. So he's realizing the magnitude of his feelings for Cordelia, because Cordelia has told him that she needs to make a match, she needs to marry someone so she can help her family, keep his reputation, and it's really funny. There's this point where he's sitting outside, because her mother invited him in for tea because she thought James might be one of the suitors, but Cordelia still thinks he's in love with Grace, and so is pushing him out, and then she's like, see, this is why I need you to find me an eligible suitor. And he's like, no, I love tea. I love tea! And a random passerby is like, good on you, man. And then thank you, Anna, for giving Cordelia these new dresses, because she will look stunning in them. And I'm also just quietly begging over here, please don't let Matthew fall for her. Please don't let Matthew fall for her. Please, I can't take another love triangle, Cassie. Please don't let Matthew fall for her. Please! Also, something that needs to be stated as well. Matthew is bisexual, and he wears this clover pin thing, because that's like stating that you love both genders, and in that time period, and I'm like, yes. And then it's time for a heist, a performance, and a seducing. And so the news from the Clave is apparently London is in quarantine because Oliver, who is engaged to Barbara, was there when she died and she scratched him, and now he went home to York, but he got sick and is now dead too. So it's contagious, so now they're in quarantine. And then back to the others, Cordelia gave a magnificent sword dancing performance thing, and she and James make out in one of the rooms, and it is intense. Whew. Like, it's undercover make out, but it went on for a lot longer than it needed to if it was undercover. I'm just saying. And Matthew turned up and was looking at her, and I'm like, Matthew, don't fall for Cordelia, don't fall for Cordelia. But Anna got the pixies because she is a queen. But not a queen, she's a legend. And we stan. Magnus is here, yay! Because basically they decide they need to check if the pixies is currently occupied, so they take it to the sanctuary and open it, and James shows that he's not as dumb as his dad and kills the demon when it tries to bargain. Just immediately kills. And Magnus is like, this is feeling very repetitive. I'm having a real sense of deja vu. There's another Herondale and another pixie. And it's funny, when he's talking about it, Lucy chimes in, like, I'm here too! And James and Matthew is apparently a massive fan of Magnus, and I find that adorable. And James can't stop thinking about Cordelia, and demons are obsessed with James, okay? They keep mentioning his grandfather and the blood that he carries. And, yeah, they go to a bridge to try and stop the Manticore demon, and the Pixies fails epically. And so Cordelia saved James from a demon, but then she fell in the river, and Lucy had to save Cordelia, and she used ghosts to help her. And then we have a flashback scene where Cortana chooses Cordelia over Alistair, because sometimes the sword chooses the wielder. Because it's a sword made by Wayland the Smith, so it's extra special. And James is growing to love Cordelia, and I'm and Alistair hid the fact that Elias is a drunk from Cordelia. That's why he's in trouble. And I'll say that. Fabulous. We got two characters with drinking problems. And Lucy turns out to have the power over ghosts, and Jesse's locket contains his last breath, and that's somehow going to be used to bring him back. And Matthew is still suffering from his lifelong guilt over what he did to his mother and the unborn baby, and that's why he's constantly drinking. That, and he's probably a bit depressed. And then Christopher gets hurt by the freaking demons, and I'm like, don't you touch my baby! And then I have to try and remember frantically, he's on the family tree, it's because of him we have Alec and Isabel, he can't die, he will be okay. And then the demon person thing who's behind everything uses the sick to deliver a message to James that the demon wants him and he needs to come now or everyone is going to die. So James, obviously being the self-sacrificing Herondale that he is, goes. And then it turns out the grandfather, the greater demon grandfather, is Belial, if I'm pronouncing that right, and wants to possess James, because he is the only greater demon that can't have a body on Earth, and he needs to possess someone properly, he needs them to have a blood connection to him. And obviously James is like, hell no. And then Grace and Thomas are going to get this ingredient to make the cure so everyone can get better from the Chiswick house, and then so Grace finds out that Lucy can see Jesse, and Thomas races off to make the cure. And then in the demon realm, Cordelia makes her way back in because she cuts her way in using Cortana, and she's there helping protect James, and freaking demon reminds James that there are two options for him. It could be him or it could be his sister. And apparently he did try previously with Tessa, but Ethereal stopped it. So, but James killed the Manticore demon, so we no longer have to worry about him. And Cordelia temporarily destroyed Belial. I say temporarily because I'm just like, if it's a greater demon, he's not going to go down that easy. Like, I don't care how special Kokatana is. And Jesse gives his last breath to save James. And then with another flashback scene, we see that Alistair and Cordelia have a very interesting sibling bond. And then freaking, when James is in recovery, Matthew makes the stupidest decision in the history of ever and lets Grace see James alone. So she gets the freaking bracelet back on his wrist, so he's back under her spell, and she gets him to burn down Blackthorn Manor. And I'm just like, we're gonna destroy this bracelet with Cortana. We gotta destroy it. And no one seems to think this is strange. And Jesse's now weaker since he gave his last breath to save James. And then, in order to protect James, because Tatiana decides at a enclave meeting to claim that he burned down Blackthorn Manor, which he did, but it was because he was under a freaking spell, and Grace is about to give testimony that he did do it. So Cordelia jumps up to say, no, he couldn't have done it because he was with me the entire night. And, in 1900s, a lady's reputation is so easy to ruin. So the fact that she did this, James decides, okay, now we have to get married to protect your reputation. So they're now engaged, and I'm like, I'm happy, but I'm not happy because James is currently under the witch's spell. Then we're at an engagement party, and Thomas found out the truth. He found out the nasty rumor that Alistair has spread at school about his dad Gideon and Matthew's mother Charlotte. Like, he didn't start the rumor, but he helped spread it, and he refused to speak to Alistair after this, because he's just like, no, I'm done. I'm done. One sec. Yeah, so, and that really hurt, like, he remembers his mother crying over this rumor, and so now he's refusing to speak to Alistair about it, and Alistair runs out, like, he has tears in his eyes, and he can't stay, because I think he really likes Thomas, likes him, and I think Thomas likes him too, but obviously that's not going to happen. And he also broke up with Charles, which honestly Alistair deserved to do. And James is torn in two, like literally he feels like he's torn in two because his true love for Cordelia is fighting against his false love for Grace. So I'm sure we're going to see that in Chain of Iron. Cordelia is still definitely in love with James, and Matthew is still drinking. Hopefully Magnus can be like a one-man rehabilitation thing. And Lucius decided to work with Grace to help bring Jesse back, and I'm like, lovely. And Magnus is staying! Yay! He's gonna bring his cat over. Maybe. And Belial and Tatiana are going to attack the Adamant Citadel. Because they found a lot of dark objects in the Blackthorn Manor. So she's going to be an Iron Sister as punishment. Fabulous. Anyway. Okay, I just gotta add on to my Chain of Gold video. I forgot a couple things. So, one is, Adrian has decided, since, Charles broke off the engagement, she's gonna fight for love and fight to get back together with Hannah. So, that's exciting. The other thing is, okay, so I mentioned the family tree, right? So, on the family tree, in the Carstairs, to where we get Emma Carstairs, apparently is descended from Alistair, but I'm pretty confident he's straight up gay, not bisexual, or pansexual, or demisexual, anything like that. I'm pretty sure he's just straight up gay. So how is he gonna have kids? Like, legitimately how? And I had the same issue with another character, Thomas Lightwood. Okay, a lot of people, I'm personally not fully on board with it yet, but a lot of people are shipping Thomas with Alistair, and I'm like, okay. Like, I can see where they're coming from in the book, and I do think it'd be rather cute as long as Alistair apologizes for being a dick and gets better. Because my boy Thomas deserves something special. But it also says that Thomas is responsible for the extended Lightwood family tree. If he's dating Alistair, how is that going to work? Are they going to adopt? Is that why the records for the Carstairs family were lost? What's going on? The other thing I've got to mention that I did not realize is that Anna and Christopher, the youngest sibling, who is little, I may have mentioned him. I can't remember if I mentioned him in this video though, called Alexander, and he's like 2 or something, I think. He's very little. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize they had a much younger sibling. There's been no pictures for this character. And so that must be who Alec is named after, because we know he's named after Gideon, but he must also be named after this Alexander, so that leaves me with 2 conclusions. 1, he's either going to do something epic, or 2, he's going to meet a very horrible fate. So, anyway, that was 2 things I just had to say. This book is amazing. This book is amazing. This book is amazing. This book was amazing. I really, really, really recommend reading it. It was so good, but I also recommend reading all the other books before you read this one. You'll get a much better reading experience about it, in my opinion. Thanks for watching, guys, and if you did enjoy this video, leave a comment, maybe even subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time. Okay.